long before your elders, there was a time when humans and apes lived side by side. Impossible as that may seem.
I'm going to start here because I heard the applause as we saw Jerry Goldsmith's name and Michael Giacchino. The score in this film was done by John Pisano, who you've worked with before. Let's start there and the conversations you had with him about paying homage to the work that had been done before.
Yeah, I basically told John from the beginning, and he started before I think anyone started. When I first came onto this thing, I was like, John, we're gonna have to figure this out, dude. But I told him you got to have 1 foot in Jerry Goldsmith, you got to have 1 foot in Michael Giacchino, and the rest is yours. A big part, as you can see from this movie, that we're trying to do is to have a foot in both camps. And the Caesar trilogy that came before us, and the way off on the horizon is that '68 original that began this whole crazy thing. So it felt right to have this kind of DNA from all these movies into this movie, So he did a good job, I think, of just trying to find that balance between kind of his doing his own thing, but still honoring and respecting and everything that had come before.
Talk to me about your relationship with the original film and the pressure of coming into this franchise. I heard you originally turned it down, or wasn't too sure. What was the pivot?
Turn it down was a strong word. How do you turn something like this down, an opportunity like this? But I was very hesitant, because of one, the last trilogy that's a hard set of movies to follow up. They were very well made and very well loved. And personally for me, I grew up watching the 1968 original. I was obviously too young, I think, to get any of the key ideas. I'm sure they went all over my head. But I remember those visuals. They're so etched in my brain, and you see some of them in this movie. My biggest hesitation was I didn't want to be a part 4. That was the main thing. I felt like it would just be like a cash grab, And I wasn't interested in doing that. And it wasn't really until we kind of came with this idea, like, okay, let's fast forward. Let's just get some distance from the previous stories while still holding on to all the reverence for it, all the honor. And as you can see now, that character is still very crucial to our story of Caesar. Once we got that distance from it, it opened up all these amazing opportunities where, we could, as an audience, rediscover this world with this character of Noah, And we talked a lot about those previous 3 movies being sort of about the end of things. It was about the end of the human world. It was about the end of Caesar's story. There is a kind of darkness to them, And could we get away with, on this one, turning the page and kind of feel like a beginning? Feel like something that a new world is starting to form. And so once we came up with those kind of ideas, apes entering into their Bronze Age, basically, where we had to, invent cultures and rituals and, a kind of immerse yourself into this like new world that's forming on the Planet of the Apes. That just felt like it was really exciting. It was cool.
The team at Weta, phenomenal. Talk about working with them and just seeing, what it was like for you to see the technology working with the mocap and doing this big film.
So I had been making a movie, Mouse Guard, before this with producer Matt Reeves, and I cast Andy Serkis. So we got pretty far down the road on that, and I was learning about the mocap thing during that process with Weta. And when that crashed and burned, that's how ultimately Planet of the Apes came about. So I'd already be kind of familiar with the technology side of things, But I will say that Mouse Guard was more of the Avatar approach, where it's a full virtual, we're on mocap stages and there's nothing to look at. It's just a gray, sterile environment. Planet of the Apes are not that. It's actually somewhat more difficult because you're locked in by the live action component that you have to shoot, right? So you have to shoot a real movie once, and then you have to go back in the computer and then redo all the characters. And so that was a very difficult process because what that basically means is I have to shoot the movie twice. I have to shoot the movie with the actors in the frame, with all this kind of technology that they're on. As you can see, there's a lot more apes in this movie. They have the cameras here. They've got a giant truck just off the screen that is basically a truck of computers that are just basically running this incredible amount of technology surrounding the set. We've got IR cameras that are hidden in the set itself that we built, so that it captures every little performance detail of these actors. And then I have to go in and say, okay, I think that take 3 was the one, Now step out of the frame, mocap ape actors, and if Freya is in the movie, she has to do it by herself. And and we shoot the movie again clean. So it's a really, really difficult process. That was the bane of my existence. I hated it, but it was a necessary part of the process, you know. So that doesn't always hold true. Sometimes I just say, you know, Weta, I'm sorry, guys, you've got to figure out how to paint him out because there's no way I'm gonna be able to get this shot to work. And there are troopers for it. It's just you have to kind of pick your battles, you know, because that takes so much time, and the shot becomes so much more complex that you won't finish the movie if you do that for every shot. You know what I mean? When we do the special edition stuff, it's been reported out there, but you know, I'm planning on showing the raw version of the movie as a feature, where you can watch the movie, you know, without all the effects in it, so you can see basically what we have to work with for basically a year and a half as you try to make these choices that you don't see sometimes for months. That's the crazy thing about this process of making this movie is it's kind of like I've described it as designing a jigsaw puzzle piece by piece independently and carving all the right angles and carving all the right kind of shapes, and then slowly this thing comes together, and it's not till like the last maybe month before you have to release the movie that all those pieces drop down, and all those choices that you made months and months ago, you better hope that they were right. You know what I mean? Occasionally we find, oh, I didn't hold in this shot long enough because it's just a different process, a different feeling when you have an ape, or something strange happens and I have to beg them to, like, you know, I'm sorry, we got to go back to the drawing board on this shot, and that means I might have to skimp on this shot or whatever it is, and just play that game basically that you do even in live action stuff. So I can't say enough things about Weta. It's been a fantastic process, and you know, hats off to him.
And you see the work on screen.
And I should also give major credit to Eric Winquist, who's our VFX supervisor, who really led this thing into the impossible. You know, it's fantastic.
We have to talk about your casting, because how did you talk about pulling together your perfect cast? You mentioned Freya, but you've got Owen, and Freya didn't have to do it, but your actors went to ape school. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, talk about another thing that was just, you know, oh my God, how are we going to find someone to follow up Andy Serkis? You know, that was a real worry on our part. But I gotta say, that was the weird thing. I saw this tape came in. He was probably the second audition tape that I found. He just popped up one day, and there he was. There was Noah. It was like amazing. It was like this thing, just miracle, just dropped out of the sky. I didn't know what he had done before. I didn't know anything about him. I just felt like he felt right. Come to find out later that Owen got into acting because when he was a little kid, like 6 years old, he saw an actor named Andy Serkis playing an ape in King Kong. That's the whole reason he got into acting.
Crazy.
You know, and so that's so wild. So anyway, because I had a friendship with Andy, you know, I asked him, like, Andy, like, what are we getting into here? Like, the whole team, this is a new team. So we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know what we were getting into. So I asked Andy, I asked him first just to read the script. What did you think of this thing? You know, how does the Caesar thing carry over? Does it feel like it's right? And just kind of getting his words of wisdom basically on it all. And then I asked him to talk to the actors. You know, like, give them some pointers. Give them what your experience. And a lot of it was just about him giving them confidence to trust in this process of this ape school where they spend 6-7 weeks walking around in the bottom of a basement with these arm extensions and just spontaneously doing things, you know, as we kind of throw, as our movement coach, Alain Gauthier, who was an old Cirque du Soleil guy, and he would just train them and test them, and they would just walk around like apes for all day. You know what I mean? It was wild. And I would occasionally stumble down the stairs into that basement, and then I'm accosted by all these apes coming up to me. It was wild. It was really, really weird. But what's so great about it is that this is what Andy kind of mentioned early on, is that you can't pretend this stuff. It doesn't work. The technology is so good that it will see through that. You have to absolutely believe it and internalize this whole physical transformation that they have to go through, so that when we're doing the scenes, they're not thinking about that stuff. So it was absolutely crucial. And I know they had a blast. I did this on the Maze Runner movies, where I kind of had a kind of pre-week boot camp where all the actors kind of got together. And what happens is this little family starts to develop, even little cliques in a weird way, as they kind of relate to their characters. But it's great because it creates this kind of sense of family when we're out on set and we're running through the mud and dealing with bugs and leeches and just the hell of making a movie. And when you have this kind of family around, you're all kind of like propping you up, you know what I mean, and patting you on the back when you do a good job and kind of helping you out. It just makes making movies a lot more fun. You know what I mean? But it's always the quiet scenes for me that I like personally. I miss sitting there and watching actors think. I miss watching the kind of, just simple like ideas that are kind of thrown out there that you can kind of contemplate, after you leave the theater. So it's probably some of those scenes that I like the most. And the fact that they're apes doing it, it makes it that much more mesmerizing, Taking for granted, essentially, just what we're doing is it's an image from a computer that hopefully you are believing is actually thinking and believing and you're empathizing with. It's like a magic trick. It's just amazing, Yeah.
Well, Wes, I want to congratulate you on Kingdom of the Planets of the Apes, and thank you everybody for coming out.
Thanks for staying. Thanks for watching it, guys.
Spread the word.